Hello and welcome. My name is Jamin Wells, and I head up the team that developed the Gulf Coast Digital History Project. This project is housed at the University of West Florida, and it provides unique opportunities to explore the maritime history and heritage of the Gulf Coast. We're so excited to launch this project and to share it with you today. If you have not already explored the project's website, then I encourage you to go to uwf.edu/Gulf History Project. That's uwf.edu/, Gulf History Project. And we hope that you explore it during this session. Over the next hour or so, we will give you a tour of the project's key components. We also have a wonderful group of panelists on tap who will discuss the value and utility of this project for graduate students and researchers, for regional museums and cultural institutions, as well as for high school educators. We'll wrap up with a Q&A session where I will do my best to address your questions and field your comments. We have already received a number of wonderful questions, but please use the Q&A discussion box at the bottom of your screen to post your questions and to vote up those questions you want to be answered. And finally, we enabled the chat feature to encourage discussion and sharing of information during this session. I look forward to this conversation. This was a large collaborative project involving 7 partner institutions spread out over almost 100 miles of the Gulf Coast. We had half a dozen students and interns working on this project, along with the incredible support of the UWF Archives and West Florida History Center, led by the unflappable Dean DeBolt. I see many of you are attending right now, and I want to start by thanking everyone who participated and contributed to this project. Without you, we would not be here today. Of course, we also want to thank the National Park Service, which provided the initial funding for this project through a 2017 National Maritime Heritage Grant. The project also received generous support from the University of West Florida. Thank you for supporting this innovative regional resource that we hope will continue to grow and evolve in the years to come. So I'm quite pleased to introduce to you the Gulf Coast Digital History Project. We will begin with a brief video that introduces the project's key features.
The Gulf Coast Digital History Project is a clearinghouse for Northern Gulf Coast maritime history and heritage resources. It supports research and scholarship by offering thousands of digitized primary sources. This free online resource is the place to begin exploration of the region's past. The project is designed to be used by teachers, students, researchers, genealogists, and history enthusiasts. Explore the thousands of photographs, maps, and other historic documents digitized from our 6 partner institutions. These documents span centuries and offer unique perspectives on the region's diverse maritime history. To access these sources, click on the Explore Now button under the Gulf South documents. Once in the portal, search the portal using the search box at the top right of the page, or explore the collection from one of our partner institutions, which are shown here. Investigate the daily logs kept by the Pensacola Lighthouse Keeper in the 1880s and 1890s, or study the records of the earliest Destin fishing rodeos in the 1950s. Examine letters and photographs detailing life at the Navy's Gulf Coast bases during the past 2 centuries. Or analyze promotional materials for the region's ports and coastal tourism industries. These are just a few of the primary sources the project offers. Additionally, the portal provides a curated list of scholarly books and articles that support understanding of the region's maritime history and heritage. Access this material from the homepage by navigating to the Read Now button on the project homepage. The evolving list of readings is organized around themes of society, economy, technology, and environment. This source is designed to assist students and new researchers in their study of the Northern Gulf Coast. Finally, the portal includes links to dozens of additional resources, including scholarly journals, historical societies, and archives focused on the maritime history and heritage of the Northern Gulf Coast. This project is hosted by the University of West Florida and made possible by a grant from the National Park Service.
All right, great. Welcome back. So as I hope you saw, this project provides access to really a treasure trove of documents that illustrate the rich maritime history and heritage of our stretch of the Gulf Coast. Today, because of this project, you can access over 6,300 unique historical documents that total over 20,000 individual pages, all via the project website. To what end, you might ask? The panelists in our upcoming discussion offer 3 perspectives on that question. They will also comment on the usability of this project and its potential for researchers, educators, and regional cultural institutions. Now, due to scheduling and technological constraints, we pre-recorded the discussion panel. It has been condensed for the purposes of time and lasts about 25 minutes. As you watch, please post your questions in the Q&A discussion box, vote up questions you want answered, and please take advantage of the chat feature. After the panel discussion, we will have our conversation.
All right. Well, I'd like to thank our panelists for joining us today to discuss the Gulf Coast Digital History Project. So we are recording this discussion, and I'll ask each of you individual questions specific to your experience. To start, I'll ask you to introduce yourself and tell us in your own words, what do you think is the most interesting part of this resource?
Sure. My name is Jeffrey Ramirez. I'm a public history graduate student here at the University of West Florida, and I was a digitizer on the project for about half a year, a little more. And what's interesting about this project is that it captures a lot of local history that would otherwise go unnoticed. This area is known as like the Forgotten Coast, I believe. And so it captures a lot of the stories that are just lost to the larger national narrative.
Great, thank you.
I'm Melissa Williams. I am a graduate student in the Department of History at UWF, and I am also a public school teacher in Santa Rosa County. So I just think this project, this database is amazingly valuable across the board for all different kinds of members of the community. I think that it's incredible to have this digital resource in this time period of COVID, with a lot of archives and libraries, very difficult to gain access to them right now. So I think that's a really useful tool that a lot of local entities don't have digitally available across the board yet.
Great, thank you. Thank you.
Well, I'm Kathy Marler Blue. I'm the executive director here at the Destin History and Fishing Museum in Destin, Florida. And I think one of the interesting things to me is that there's so many photographs and documents that tend to be lost over time. And it's so valuable to have this history not only preserved for the relatives of the people that are in those, for locals and for researchers, because in this day and time, young people tend to throw out stuff as the older generation dies off, and we're constantly losing so much of our history. So as a little museum, just a little 501c3 nonprofit, for us to be able to be a part of this project and to get a head start on digitizing the collection is invaluable.
Yeah. Wonderful, thank you. And thank all 3 of you for joining this panel and sharing your perspectives and your experience. I'm excited to dive into this a little bit. So Jeffrey, as you mentioned, you were a key member of the team that did all this digitization. So could you maybe tell us a little bit about the process of digitizing the thousands of documents that are at the heart of this project? And again, over 6,300 items were scanned for the entire project. That's 25,000 individual scans were made. That's really quite a feat.
Yeah, and it gets a little complicated. So from the very beginning, we would get materials that were donated to us, like books, photos, and other documents. We would make sure when we took them out, that we kept them together. We kept them with their folders, their subfolders, so that everything that we got, we sent back as good as we got it. We used a series of Epson scanners of various sizes, depending on what we were using. One of them was an overhead scanner with the book cradle, because we had a lot of larger pieces from the Destin Museum. I believe Jessica, a partner in the fall, scanned I believe it was a scrapbook, and it had like decorations on the top and within, and a bunch of photos, and so things like that, which were great, but were too large for a little scanner with the thing. We used the large Epson scanner on it. The scanning was pretty fast. What really took the most amount of time was metadata. We use an open source software called Islandora. Say you have a photo. So you'd create an object of that photo, and you fill out the summary, the metadata, so like key information like what type of history this is, what this object is, when it was created, who's in it, who created it, ownership, and things like that. And then you would upload it onto the file. And that took a long time, but the software is intuitive, so we would get faster as we got better and as we were more comfortable with it. And that's pretty much the process. It's time consuming, but it's worthwhile because we made sure to try to capture as much as we could of the items and the information that we could from them.
Yeah. So again, that metadata, scanning and digitizing is so much more than just putting something on a scanner and pressing copy. That putting all that information in that is searchable, that when you search Destin Fishing and History Museum rodeo records in Google, that for that to pop up to link to this portal and these documents, that one of the many documents that Kathy's museum shared as part of this project, that all that background data has to be inputted, and that it's a really labor-intensive process that you described for us. So thank you. So Kathy, the Destin Fishing and History Museum is one of 7 regional institutions that were involved in this project, and we're so grateful for your participation. A few hundred items from your collection were scanned and can be accessed through the project website. And they are amazing documents as well. Can you maybe tell us a bit about the documents?
The ones that we loaned for this project, I think some that were, to me, most interesting, and I think one of the things is for instance, one of those, the rodeo, the Destin Fishing Rodeo, is one of the longest running fishing tournaments that exists in the United States. It started in 1948. Well, it just so happens that we happen to have the handwritten journal books that are the fish weigh-ins from 1954 to 1988. After 2000, they were computerized anyway, and I'm not sure what happened between 89 and then. But it's so interesting, these documents that we have that are just these notebooks we have out where people can actually look through them. We have folks come in the museum and they find their grandparent when they were young came and caught a fish, and they see the actual date and the entry, and they're so excited and they take photos of that. So people that have ever been in the rodeo from 1954 forward actually can see this information. Another interesting thing, the Leonard Hutchison documents. Leonard Hutchison was a very colorful character. He retired from the Secret Service out of DC in 1952 and moved to Destin. And with his contacts all around the world, he wrote fishing reports, and he sent those out to his contacts at newspapers and magazines and so forth. And he especially sent them to the hometown newspapers of the angler. So these handwritten drafts of what he did, and he would type and then he would send photographs, to have those is really pretty incredible. And one of the other of the things that we did, we have the Mittler family donated to us boxes of information. They owned the Marlboro Motel, little mom and pop motel here in Destin, and they started the first billfish tournament. Now, interesting enough, billfish were not readily known in this particular part of the Gulf, and the first one brought to the docks here in Destin was in September of 1962 by Captain Bruce Marler on a 41-foot boat named the Wahoo, and it was a 13-foot blue marlin. Took 5 hours to land, and when they got it to the docks, it broke the only scales that were available at the time, and it really then created an interest in billfish tournaments or billfish fishing in the area. So those records from the Marlboro Billfish Tournament are important because that tournament grew to become the current Billfish Tournament, at Baytown. And so that history evolved over time. So these records would be lost. And now they are for researchers to and for family members and locals. It's just so incredible to have those. So I'm just so excited that we have those items digitized.
Yeah. Thank you, Kathy. And that is just one, and those are just a few of many documents in your museum that you have out in these wonderful exhibits. And I hope, and there's just so much more for folks to go and visit you and see even more. And so I think that these documents just scratch the surface of what your museum has and all our partner museums. Again, the 6,000 might sound like a lot, or 20,000 scans sounds like a lot, but it's a drop in the bucket of what you're preserving. So, so one more question for you, Kathy. What is the value of participating in this project to your organization? You spoke to it a bit in your introduction, but what does it mean to have these documents publicly accessible online?
One of the biggest things is, as a little museum, of course, getting our name out there and getting that PR out there to create an interest so people will come and visit the museum. And one of the things, and you hinted on it, but we are so fortunate. There are descendants here in Destin of all 16 of the original 16 last name families. So we have folks here with the handed down stories, the vintage photographs, and the physical items. And your project has really helped us to fast track a project that we hope to ultimately do. And we were fortunate we've acquired the hardware and software to digitize our collection. But that, I don't know if that'll happen in my lifetime because there's just so much, but at least we have the start. And so your facility doing this to help kickstart us to be able to perhaps, really get in on doing that will help preserve the items we have here in our museum.
Wonderful. And I look forward to seeing that project. I suspect a whole lot of that will get done, and we'll be talking soon, I'm sure. So, so Melissa, as a high school educator, can you maybe tell us how this project might be used in your classroom? Is it common for students, high school students, to use digitized primary sources like these in history projects? How do they interact with these kind of documents today?
Yeah, I think this is a great resource for the secondary classroom, high school social studies, and even any application that you could see in language arts, social studies. I think that this could be a very valuable tool for teachers and high school students as well. I think in some upper level history courses, it is pretty common for high school students to be interacting with primary sources. And I think that all history courses are moving in that direction as well. And teachers are eager to incorporate these types of things into their curriculum. A lot of times we're given just a very basic textbook or a very basic curriculum that we know and we want to enrich that for our students and for the sake of enriching their knowledge of history as well, and also engage them in the learning even more as well. So I think that a lot of teachers, myself included, have spent hours and hours combing through the internet, combing through whatever we can find to kind of piece together what we can to enrich the curriculum and engage the students. And a lot of that is time consuming, and it takes a lot of effort and a lot of time that teachers they don't always have the luxury of being able to do that for the sake of time, even if they would like to, of course. So I think this is an amazing database that can engage teachers and students in local history. It's relevant to local students. It's an interesting topic, many topics within this database that students they could relate to. A lot of them might even have relatives or people that they know or are familiar with featured in the records. And I think it's a great tool for the secondary teacher it's easily accessible. A lot of us are trying to balance some in-person classes and some online classes right now. And so it works across the board. It can work for in-person students and for online students. It's easy to navigate and access for both teachers and students, no matter where they are. And it's searchable, which is amazing too. It's just a really great, well-organized tool that I think that teachers would really appreciate, being able to have all of it just in one place and easily available for them to use.
Well, that's great to hear. Melissa and Jeffrey, this question's for both of you as graduate students who have conducted historical research into this region's history. How might this resource be useful to future researchers, or what maybe insights can you share for those who will build on some of the work that you have done?
Sure. I think this is really useful for graduate students and college students in general. As I mentioned before, it's really difficult to get into archives and libraries right now, and that's a huge part of what I've been doing with master's research as well. So things like this, I'm sure that they will be coming out and becoming more prevalent, but this seems really rare to find. And this seems like I do not come across many databases as user-friendly, as searchable. The fact that each item has a detailed description of what it is incredible, and it's so useful as a graduate student when you're trying to find a specific item that's relevant to your research. I was honestly shocked when I saw that each item had a detailed description, keywords, like the level of development in the database is very rare, and I think it's going to be extremely useful for college and graduate students.
Yeah, those keywords took a while. Yeah, to echo that accessibility is a big thing, especially with lockdowns and even just basic things like disabilities, time. Not everybody has time to go to the archives or call up an archivist and plead with them, be nice, to ask them to try to scan something for you and email it to you. So this is definitely a big thing, especially for working graduate students, to be able to access something. And another thing is it gives you an idea of what's in the archive. So if you do have time to actually go down there, you have an idea of like how much of a certain item or a certain category that they may have. If they have this digitized, they may have more, things like that. But I think the biggest thing is, especially when you start looking at key item or keywords and other metadata like that, you can see how historians and archivists and other people are discussing materials. And then you can basically use that to bank off into another line of thought. For instance, a lot of the things like the NAS photos that we had, we were using metadata that they had given us, but we started noticing things in the photos themselves. So if they have a picture of like seaplanes on docks, they'll give like detailed examples of what the seaplane is, like where the dock is and stuff like that. But in the corner of one picture, there were two Black children just sitting there and watching sailors working on the planes. And so, but that wasn't in the metadata at all. So when you start seeing what's missing from the metadata or what's missing in the descriptions, you can basically use this, use these items to begin your route down a new story entirely. So it's things like that, like even thinking outside the box a little, that this archive gives you basically access to a lot of new things that you wouldn't otherwise have. And as a graduate student, it gives you ideas of like where you want to take your research and how to take your research.
That's wonderful. And we've been talking so much about the scan, the primary sources, which is a huge part of this project. And there are two other components of this, which I hope will grow and be useful, are the links it provides to other archives, historical resources. There's a list of preliminary scholarly books and articles to help you flush out and read and learn more about particular topics that I think will continue to grow and could be useful as you're just entering a subject for the first time. And hopefully those lists will help speed along that research process early on. So wonderful. I really appreciate that. So I think to close out, let's go around the horn again and maybe have each of you, if you could, recap in, let's say, 30 seconds or less, the biggest takeaway for you for this project, the greatest potential you see for it. That would be really wonderful. So Kathy, would you like to start?
Yes, on a final note, again, we're just so appreciative that you asked us to be a part of this. It's a little museum. We're just thrilled because this is like big time. So we're so happy to be a part of it, and we feel like it helps to put us in the next century technologically, to get the not only our name out there, but to get people interested in the kinds of artifacts and documents that we have available here at our museum. And that's just a big part. We're losing history every day. You know, it's like one of the things, and I think he mentioned about photographs. When I first came to the museum, I started looking only at the foreground of photographs. And now I'm going back and looking at the background of photographs. And I agree, sometimes we have to look at artifacts and photos and things out of the box in a different light, and it brings on a whole different realm of what you're looking at.
Well, thank you, Kathy. And it's so exciting for your museum to be part of this. Your collection, your exhibits are wonderful, and I hope everyone goes to your museum and visits, and as they should, to see these documents, to see your artifacts, your interpretations are really spectacular, as well as all our partner institutions. And it took such a big, diverse team to create this project, and I can't stress that enough. So, Jeffrey, I'd love to hear your thoughts.
Sure. Like my biggest takeaway is, as I love local history, and this kind of just cemented like how many different stories there are to tell with just using local sources. And yeah, I want to, like, a lot of this is like going to be disappearing. Some of the letters that I scanned were like paper, like you could see through them, and the ink, they used iron-based ink, so the letters were literally being rusted away. So this project entirely, like working as a digitizer and just from the working perspective, like it was great to see, like, to be able to like help preserve a lot of these stories and a lot of this history, local and military, and and it was a fun experience. And every graduate student should probably work in the archive at least once.
Great, thank you, Jeffrey. I agree. The archive is a splendid place, and the archivists who supported this, especially Dean DeBolt and Tim Bolger, were phenomenal and essential to this project. So at the UWF libraries. Melissa, please.
Yeah, I think the digital accessibility of this database is just hugely important for both graduate students, college students that are mostly online now, and as well as history teachers locally and high school students locally. The fact that you can bring these primary sources from all of these local places, we can't really do field trips anymore like we might have gone to local museums in the past, but you're bringing that history right into the classroom through these primary sources. And that really just brings the history alive and makes the student interested in the history more so than a textbook ever could. So I think that engagement that students get through seeing things firsthand, seeing these pictures and letters that actually were present in these moments of history is just a priceless resource for the continuing the love of history and perpetuating that through new generations.
Well, that's wonderful. I couldn't agree more, and I think it's an exciting project. It's going to grow. But I want to thank you all so much for participating in this discussion. I learned a lot, and I appreciate your contributions to the project, your insights into the value of the Gulf Coast Digital History Project. Thank you so much.
All right. All right, and I think we're back. So I really valued and really did learn a lot by having that conversation with Jeffrey, Melissa, and Kathy to get their perspectives on the project. The conversation went a bit longer, but we edited it down just to be mindful here of time. So we'd like to open up and start the Q&A, and I see 2 have already been posted, and I have a handful of others that we've received previously. But I want to start with this poll to get a sense of who is in the audience right now. So I believe you should be able to see that now. And if you're able to click in, that would be wonderful. And it's populating. Great. And it looks like almost everyone has completed that. So thank you for the poll. And it looks like we have about half are fall into that scholar researcher. And it looks like we might have about half are in the scholar researcher area. The next are educators, history lovers, and museum archive professionals here. And I want to particularly thank the students for coming out and participating in this. So, all right. There, I think I can share those for you. Great. So we have a diverse group here interested in this portal, which is fantastic because it was really intentionally designed to appeal to as broad a group as possible. So as questions come up, please use the chat, use the Q&A, and we'll try to address all your questions and read your comments. So the first question I saw posted was, it says, great resource and work. I'm already finding really great info, so thank you. And he plans to expand the project into other areas of the Gulf Coast in the future. further to the east in Florida, perhaps other Gulf Coast states. So yes, we are already thinking about exploring future funding opportunities, because I think, as you saw the discussion, particularly from Jeffrey, this is a very labor-intensive effort, and it takes time. And so, and also there are a number of kind of costs associated with it, but there are a lot of opportunities of expanding the depth of the collection. So pulling, digitizing more material from the partner institutions and expanding the collaboration to include more partners. And so we've already begun reaching out to some other institutions and, again, searching for those funding opportunities. So we really hope that this is the first phase of a project that will continue to grow and expand and evolve in different ways. Which I think leads to this next question is, do you have any specific lessons learned from this project that would help others who are attempting a similar project? The regional level of maritime heritage needs a lot more attention. So we took a very explicitly collaborative approach on this project, where we reached out to a number of regional museums and historical societies and libraries and asked if they would be interested in participating. And we were keen to not duplicate pre-existing resources, and there's really robust efforts to make available online documents and material related to the 16th, 17th, 18th centuries, especially in Florida. And so we were focusing, you'll see that there is an emphasis on 19th and 20th century materials in the collection in this first phase. And so when we reached out to partner institutions, we asked them, what would you like to share from your collection? And really let them make the decisions about what documents were available. And so I think that worked out really well in conversations with all our partners, that they appreciated to have that input, because to work as a true collaboration, that was really important. The other lesson learned is that this is really time intensive, and it took us a little longer than expected, of course, with COVID, with closures, and kind of navigating that was a challenge. And we learned to refine our processes and our workflows. And so we're becoming ever more efficient and have a real sense of the time, the effort, and the way to navigate this project in the future. So we're really ready and excited to expand this effort. The next question is very interested in the possibility of using this to understand past ecological conditions in the region. How did you decide on keywords? And so that is a great question, and I appreciate that. And there is a number of interesting collections in here that I think speak to understanding marine environmental change. I think the Destin Rodeo records, and in particular, offer this really fascinating long-term study of fish catches that have rough locational data, have species and size data, which is just really ripe. And it's covering like a 30-40 year period. And so there's wonderful opportunities, I think, to think about marine environmental history from that perspective. And so keywords is an evolving effort. We looked at the collection, we had conversations about what would make the most sense to make that resource as broadly as available as possible. And I suspect those keywords will be added to and will evolve as researchers get into the material, as we receive feedback on what's effective and what's not. So the metadata, the keywords, the searchable terms can certainly evolve and over time, and we expect that it will. Let me see here. We got some other questions here. Does your project aim to include earlier resources? I'm seeing a good bit of information from the 19th century, but what about the 15th, 16th onwards? We initially, like I was saying, we focused on 19th and 20th because there's a real dearth of available resources, particularly primary sources. online that's available. And so we felt there was a real need there for us in this initial phase to focus on. There are some really wonderful, as I was saying, resources that explore that, particularly in Florida. And I believe you can find those links in the resources page. So, but who knows how this will evolve, and I think that'll depend on the partners and the collaborators moving forward. What type of ink did he talk about that tends to disappear? So there are in the UWF Historic Trust part of the scanned images, there's a series of correspondence in there, which I believe was an iron-based link. I'm not an expert here, so so all that's left of the paper, and it was the copy. The ink is actually has eroded the paper, and so when you they put down the document on the scanner, the words were just etched out of the document, and so they're kind of this effort to preserve them in their state that they are now, because they continue to devolve a little bit. So it's a really fascinating, and to read those, you're able to read them now in the scan in a way that you can't read them when you actually look at the physical document. So it was really a wonderful opportunity there. So I think we've answered the ones that have been posted. I had one or two that came in earlier that I want to make sure we touch on. And one was, are there any oral histories? And there were, there are not any oral histories digitized as part of this project, although UWF Archives and West Florida History Center does have a number of oral histories that have been digitized and are accessible via their site, but none at this point that are part of that, although we're looking to, again, expand it and include some that address the maritime history and heritage of our region. Opportunities for student involvement in the project. We had, I believe, 6 students work on this project over the 2.5 years that we were scanning and digitized. Hopefully, as we are able to move into the next phase and expand this project, there'll be even more opportunities. And so you'll see, I hope, calls and opportunities will hopefully come up, if not in the spring, hopefully next year. So stay tuned, Daniel, stay tuned. And I believe Dean DeBolt, hi Dean, thanks for coming in and joining us. Gave a fuller, more complete answer than I could on the iron gall ink that we just talked about. Christy, I am I'm looking for, and I think there's a real need for, an aggregated archive of historic maps in one place. It is hard trying to track down maps through different archives. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. There are some national, international websites, the Ramsey Map Collection, the Library of Congress. But as far as I'm aware, there's not really a regionally specific one. So that's definitely a space that I could see this project evolving and growing, because many are available. Yeah, the last question is we received before is, I'm on the board of a local historical society. Can we become part of this project? And the short answer is yes, we'd love to have a conversation. So if you are on the site, there is contact information for us. So I encourage you to reach out, and we can think about and explore how that might evolve. And so there's definitely opportunities to become part of this project and become part of the collaboration. All right. So, and I'm seeing a great discussion on the ink and I believe the maps as well. So wonderful. Well, if there are any more questions, feel free to put them in. But I think we will kind of move towards concluding this session. So thank you for your questions. Thank you for the comments. Please reach out to us if you have further questions or ideas that you'd like to share with the project team. And again, you can find our contact information on the project website. As I mentioned in the beginning and in the Q&A, we really hope that this project continues to expand and evolve in the years to come, and that the resource you see today is the nucleus of a broader, more inclusive, and more diverse digital history project. We are actively seeking funding opportunities to continue this work, and we're eager to broaden the partnerships that are at the heart of this effort. And again, if you or your organization might be interested in joining this project, please reach out. So if possible, I'd love to get that first slide up, Anna. To close, wonderful. I'd like to just, again, acknowledge and thank our founding partners, the Destin History and Fishing Museum, the Florida Public Archaeology Network, the Gulf Breeze Area Historical Society, the National Aviation Museum Library, the Pensacola Lighthouse and Maritime Museum, the UWF Historic Trust, and the UWF Archives and West Florida History Center at the UWF Libraries. We also want to thank the National Park Service again, who provided the initial funding for this project through the National Maritime Heritage Grant, as well as the University of West Florida, which also provided generous support. And a special thanks to the many individuals, we could go to that slide, who have worked on this project over the past 3 years. You've done really just an exceptional job here and really made this project and this launch possible. So truly, thank you. And finally, I want to thank you for joining us for this launch of the Gulf Coast Digital History Project. I think we'll go to the last one. Please help us spread the word about this resource and let us know how you use it. Please stay safe, take care, and have a great day.